Well, good afternoon. I'm really delighted to host our October data sharing and data reuse seminar. It's going to be a great seminar. I'm really pleased to welcome you. This is a seminar series that is sponsored by the Office of Data Science Strategy. Our work in ODSS, as we like to call it, is to catalyze data science activities across the NIH between all of our 27 institutes and centers. And we work on activities such as creating greater data science infrastructure, such as our partnership with our Google, AWS, and Azure cloud service providers. We work to create greater interoperability between data platforms and data. We support data repositories, fair data sharing. We also support software hardening and software development, and of course, workforce training and diversity. Our seminar series is a way to highlight data science activities that are happening in the institutes at NIH and not necessarily at ODSS, but certainly we sponsor this seminar. It's an opportunity for you to hear about activities and important funding priorities of our institutes. Our next seminar series after today will be on November 19th, and it's Dr. Alex Ropolowski from Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center. Today, if you don't mind using the chat button, you can find the chat button, I believe, at the bottom of your screen to ask questions of our seminar speaker. Thank you so much for accommodating us with the chat. Before we get started, I just want to highlight one activity that may be of interest to you, which is a request for information on search capabilities across the biomedical landscape for NIH data-wide discovery. This notice or this request for information is due on December 3rd. You can submit your responses to our website, so it's a really interactive way for you to tell us a little bit about your use cases, your expectations, and desired capabilities for enabling greater data and information discovery across the NIH-wide data ecosystem. Particularly, we would like to understand better researchers' experiences and expectations in finding data, cohort data, for example, or data sets, and information that would greatly enable your research and your capabilities. We'll be utilizing this information as we launch the workshop in the later part of January on 2022, so stay tuned for more announcements about that. It's a pleasure to introduce my colleague today, Dr. Amanda Price. She's the director of the Cognitive Development, Behavioral Neuroscience, and Psychobiology program in the Child Development and Behavioral branch of the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institutes of Child Health and Human Development. She first joined NICHD in 2019 as a AAAS fellow, and she's contributed to many NIH activities, including the Blueprint for Neuroscience Research, the BRAIN Initiative, for example, and other projects relating to neuroimaging, measuring brain circuitry, mapping mammalian brain connectivity. She has received her PhD in human genetics from the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and completed a postdoc at the Lieber Institute for Brain Development in Baltimore. Amanda, I'm turning it over to you, and thank you so much for coming to our seminar series today and introducing NICHD's data science activities. I'm going to stop sharing now, if you don't mind.
Thank you for that introduction. So I'd like to quickly go through some of the data science activities available at the NICHD before introducing our speaker today. The NICHD has a brand new Office of Data Science and Sharing established this year, and the office leads and coordinates NICHD's activities within data science, bioinformatics, data sharing policy and compliance, and emerging technologies. And the vision is a culture of responsible and innovative use of data and biospecimens that accelerates research in support of NICHD's mission to understand human development, improve reproductive health, enhance the lives of all children and adolescents, and optimize abilities for all. So you can find more information about this new office at the link below. And if you'd like to get in touch with the staff of this office, Dr. Rebecca Rosen is the director of the Office of Data Science and Sharing, and we have recently hired a new deputy director, Valerie Cotton, and they also have a new data scholar fellow, Anne Slots Mays, and these are their email addresses if you'd like to reach them. Another opportunity at NICHD is the Data Science and Specimen, or Data and Specimen Hub, which is DASH. This is a centralized resource for researchers to share and access de-identified data from studies funded by NICHD. And it's also a portal for requesting biospecimens from selected DASH studies. So you can access DASH at dash.nichd.nih.gov. NICHD also has a couple of active funding opportunity announcements that relate to data sharing and reuse. An R21 opportunity for the ABCD study, which is the Adolescent Brain and Cognitive Development Study. Reusing the data available through that study is one opportunity, with their last receipt date coming up in early January. We also offer some small grant opportunities, which are our R03s, for using the data included in the Gabriella Miller Kids First Pediatric Research Data Program. This program is a data resource focused on data to study the genetics of childhood cancers and/or structural birth defects. So these opportunities prioritize the archiving and secondary analysis of data sets generated using NICHD funds. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Karen Adolph. Dr. Adolph is the Julius Silver Professor of Psychology and Neuroscience and Professor of Applied Psychology at New York University. She uses observable motor behaviors and a variety of technologies, including video, motion tracking, instrumented floor, etc., to study developmental processes. Dr. Adolph directs the NIH-funded Databrary Video Library, which is what she'll be discussing today, and the Play Project, and she maintains the DataView video coding tool. Dr. Adolph received her PhD from Emory University and completed a postdoctoral fellowship at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. She is a fellow of the American Psychological Association and Association for Psychological Science and past president of the International Congress on Infant Studies. She's received many awards, including the Kurt Koepka Medal, Cattell Sabbatical Award, APF Vance Memorial Award, APA Boyd McCandless Award, ICIS Young Investigators Award, the First and Merit Awards from NICHD, and 5 teaching awards from NYU. She chaired the NIH study section on motor function and speech rehabilitation and serves on the McDonald Foundation Advisory Board and editorial boards of developmental psychobiology and motor learning and development. Dr. Adolph has published 190 articles and chapters, and her research on perceptual motor learning and development has been continually funded by NIH since 1991. So today, she will be speaking about Databrary in a talk focused on secure and ethical sharing of research video as data and documentation. And I'm greatly looking forward to hearing what she has to say. So with that, I will stop sharing.
Okay. Can you guys, am I good? Can you hear me?
You're great, thank you.
Okay, well, in this talk, I'm going to describe how to create big data from video and how to openly share it, even though it's personally identifiable, how to annotate it and how to mine it to make discoveries about human behavior. So, like, what do researchers need to know to facilitate health and to combat disease? At this point, I've lived long enough to see, the Decade of the Brain and the Human Connectome Project to map the brain, the Human Genome Project to fully describe our genes, the Regulome Project to understand how genes are regulated, the Microbiome Project to describe all the tiny biological creatures that live in our skin and in our gut. And there's big data for all of it. Well, our aim is to build big data about behavior, like a behaviorome, where behavioral researchers and data scientists can get together to characterize people's behaviors in health and in disease. Not just, how their brains are working and what they're thinking and how their bodies are working, but how they move and what they do. As Daniel Wolpert said in his TED Talk, the whole reason that animals evolved brains and bodies is to enable behavior, to allow us to do things, to affect the world. Behavior is the most important and critical part of animals' function. And it's the centerpiece of behavioral science and education and biomedical research. Behavior is everything we do. It's all the ways that we interact with others and with the world. And it's also the most beautiful and creative and sexy and surprising thing that we can study. So take Hunt's recent paper in Science. This is a paper about acrobatic wild squirrels that can leap and land using amazing parkour maneuvers. So, reading about it is good. And seeing a graphical illustration is better. And still photos are really nice, but nothing beats seeing the real thing, like really seeing it, in slow motion so that you can appreciate the beauty and the marvelousness of the behaviors of anyone, wild squirrels. Video provides the best data, big or small, about human and animal behavior. Video uniquely captures the richness and the complexity of behavior and the subtle details of the surrounding context. Moreover, video is largely self-documenting. Like, you don't need a detailed record of the data provenance because video data can speak for itself. In fact, video provides the best documentation of data provenance for any kind of data. And as a documentation, video is more powerful than text or still images. And finally, video is cheap and it's easy to use, and it's widely available on any smartphone or camcorder. Video data and documentation can improve behavioral science. Video captures the details of behavior and the surrounding context, so it's uniquely suited for research reuse and for documentation of procedures. Video uniquely captures phenomena. For example, in a famous study of children's scale errors, Judy Deloche showed that young children sometimes make serious attempts to perform impossible actions on miniature objects. Like, they'll try to slide down a little toy slide or jam themselves into a little toy car or sit on a little doll-sized chair. So this is a figure from Judy's paper. And sure, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a video is worth 1,000 pictures.
Hello? Okay.
Which story should we read?
Most of behavioral science is about people from Western cultures, people like us. So it's hard to imagine the diversity of behaviors in different cultures and the differences in behaviors in health and disability. Like, cultures differ really widely about child rearing practices and what caregivers think is appropriate for young children. This video shows a young infant holding a sharp knife and the baby's using this knife like as a play object, like a rattle, but to play with a monkey. And, there's adult caregivers nearby. Here is an Armenian man exercising his infant to promote motor development. In many cultures, vigorous exercise like this is integral to child rearing. It's part of parents' everyday practices because it's part of their expectations about what you should do, like what you need to do to ensure that your children have healthy motor development. In a remote region of Turkey, there's a whole family of 15 siblings who crawl on their hands and feet instead of walking upright. Now, some of these siblings have cerebellar agenesis, but all of the siblings could walk. They just didn't. There was no social pressure to walk. Video can capture details of disabilities and how disabilities change behaviors. This is video of a child with cerebral palsy. You can see how difficult it is for him to hold up his head or to sit upright, to perform simple actions like grasping a ring. Video ensures adherence to a protocol, and it provides a clear avenue for quality assurance. Video can capture the details of interventions and whether the practitioners are adhering to the protocol. Quality assurance is especially critical when there's multiple researchers collecting the data, or when data are collected in different sites, or when data are collected over long periods of time, or if the data involve subject populations that are especially vulnerable or rare. This is a child in a training program that's designed to improve the prognosis for children with cerebral palsy. Video documents procedures with more fidelity than any text-based description in any method section of an article. Our procedures are not clear from the method sections of our papers. They can't be, because how can you explain what's happening over time and space using only words and still pictures? In fact, the reproducibility crisis may be largely due to researchers not knowing what the prior researchers really did. Video as documentation can make behavioral science more transparent and more reproducible. In fact, we argue that all psychological and neuroscience and medical research would benefit from video documentation, regardless of the data type or the study design or the type of animal or the type of population. Talking about behavioral studies and questionnaire studies and imaging studies and research done with rodents or humans or infants or adolescents or adults with healthy or clinical populations, in US samples, or with cultural comparisons, all would benefit from video documentation. We write things in our journal articles like infants wore a head-mounted eye tracker, but how do you even get a head-mounted eye tracker on a baby? Well, here's how you do it. You do it in stages in the context of play. So readers need to really see the procedures, not just read about them. Even the most seemingly obvious procedures really are not that obvious. For example, we asked 15 child language experts how to administer the standard test of infant vocabulary, and we got 15 different answers. Parents should fill it in with paper and pencil. No, parents should do it online. You should give the instructions in writing. No, give the instructions orally. When you give the instructions, say this thing or say that thing. Well, here's a way to do it when it's administered orally, but you can really see how the people are doing it.
No.
Shoe,
Yes.
sock,
Yes.
chin,
Yes.
ear,
Yes.
hand,
Yes.
leg,
No.
broom,
No.
comb,
Yes. Yes. No.
mop,
No.
plate.
Yes.
Even procedures that seem so intuitively obvious, like how to request consent or how to obtain permission for sharing data, need video documentation.
You would allow us to put the data and the video that we took into a secure online data library that's accessible to other researchers, like the one that Genesis Lab. Okay. So this is the form product, goes over it in a little more detail, and you'll see there's actually 2 levels of permission.
Okay.
One is just to have it in the data in the library for research purposes.
Okay.
And then there's a second place if you also give permission for researchers to use clips or images for scientific or educational purposes. So you can look that over, and since both of you are on the video, we need you to consent for yourself there, and then we need you to consent for her as well.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Many researchers show people displays. But with static representations of dynamic displays, you have to use arrows to represent time, and then the static images represent different time points. But why have arrows represent time when you can just have time represent time? These are static images from a new method to test whether babies can match sights with sounds. It's impossible to imagine the complex changes over time and space without really seeing it.
A storm came up, the ocean swelled. Oh, save us, please, the rooster yelled. But I say, Mr. White Rabbit, where are you going? He won't answer me.
It's impossible to imagine these kinds of complex changes over time and space without seeing it. The real power of video is reuse, where researchers with different expertise can look at the same videos to address different questions. They can reuse videos to ask new questions that go beyond the scope of the original study. Compared to flat file data like numbers and columns, the richness of video makes it uniquely suited for reuse. We can speed scientific progress through video reuse. Our expertise is siloed. Every researcher knows their own little piece of the universe, but behavior is happening in a whole person in a real environment. So we need to know more than our own little corner of the world. By sharing and reusing video, we can capitalize on each other's expertise. Data collection is inefficient. It's hard to recruit participants. It's hard to collect data. We waste research dollars because the same, different researchers are collecting the same data over and over. Our samples don't represent the diversity of behavior because individual labs are limited in their access to participants. By sharing and reusing videos, we can make data collection more efficient. Basically, we can bring behavior from around the world to all of the world. But reuse requires sharing. And I'm talking about real sharing. That means open sharing, not merely collaborating, not just sharing with people who ask for your data, sharing with people that you don't know, people who might not agree with you, who might not even like you, and who might do something even better with your data. Sharing is becoming an imperative. It's going to be mandated for all NIH projects by 2023. It's currently mandated by NSF and some journals, but real open sharing requires community buy-in. And I'm talking about proper sharing here, where the data are actually findable and interpretable. An openly shared behaviorome is not just a pipe dream, because we're doing it. NIH funded the Play and Learning Across a Year, the PLAY project, to capitalize on the power of video for data and documentation. The PLAY project has several aims. PLAY is building the world's largest openly shared corpus of video data of parent-child natural activity in the home. PLAY openly shares video documentation of every part of the data collection, from recruitment and scheduling to the home visits to questionnaire administration. This is total transparency. The videos allow other people to see exactly who did what and how they did it and where they did it and when they did it. And this is critical because if we want to change how the field does behavioral science, Instead of the knowledge being locked away in one lab, the workflow is shared openly. So you don't need to scour a syntax file or read the cliff notes about the protocol or get it all explained to you over dinner. Every detail is there on video in real time as it really happened. Play is also openly sharing all of the infrastructure, the code for the parent-facing website, the code for the tablet-based questionnaires, the code for the video annotations, the code for the quality assurance, all of it, so that new researchers can take the infrastructure and repurpose it for their own studies. And we're changing the field by doing synergistic science, where we pool our resources, we pool our expertise, and we distribute the work burden so that we can build something bigger and more important than one researcher studying one area of behavior on their own. So Play is big data. It's really big science done at scale. It involves 70 researchers across the US and Canada, 19 of whom have clinical expertise. And together we're collecting 1 hour in the lives of 1,000 plus babies from 30 diverse sites across the US. We have video tours of the family homes to record resources like toys and books and space to move and clutter and chaos and safety and gendered environments. And we have video-based questionnaires about infant and family health, infants' language development, their temperament, the home environment, and so on. Natural behavior truly is rich and complex. I'm going to show you 10 seconds of natural infant mother activity in the home.
Uno, tres.
Yeah. Uno, dos, tres.
Uno, tres. Uno, tres.
Everything happens in a few seconds of behavior, and video can capture all of it, all the behaviors, the emotions and speech and movement and gestures and Spanish and English and social interactions and counting and the surrounding context, the objects, the room, the furnishings, all of it. Based on the expertise of our 70 researchers, we're fully transcribing all of the infant and mother speech. We're applying annotations about the function of the mother's language and the maturity of the infant's vocalizations. We're scoring all of the mother and baby gestures, annotating the mother and baby emotions, their interactions with objects, and their locomotion. And we're collecting video tours of the entire home, including children's rooms. This room is just a never-ending sea of pink. We're collecting video records of children's toys and their books, and whether the toys and books are in a location where children can have easy access. We're even collecting video records of children's clothes to test how clothing affects children's play and the responses of their mothers. And Play is a demonstration proof of the power of video as documentation. We're using video to document all of the protocols and questionnaires. We're using video to document all of the video annotations. We're using video to record everything from the phone call to recruit the families to when we walk out the door. And we're using video to train each site and to ensure adherence to the protocol so we can conduct quality assurance. But the behaviorum is larger than just the Play project. Play is part of a larger NIH-funded project called Databrary. Databrary is a web-based library for research video, so that's why we call it Databrary. Like I showed you, identifiable video and other data can be shared. Databrary is a library for the secure, ethical, open sharing of research videos. Databrary makes human and animal behavior accessible to researchers and data scientists. Video is uniquely suited for reuse, so you can ask questions beyond the scope of the original study, questions the original researchers had never even imagined. By sharing and reusing videos, we can capitalize on each other's expertise We can speed progress. Video uniquely documents procedures and findings. You can see exactly what the researchers did and how the participants responded. And that's going to increase scientific transparency and address reproducibility. It's also going to improve teaching and training. And Databrary preserves our history, so it automatically transcodes videos into preservable formats, and it's going to organize and store videos indefinitely. As of this week, Databrary had 1,400 authorized investigators from 660 institutions around the globe and was serving up around 95,000 hours of shared video. Databrary is the only data repository that's devoted to openly sharing video. So it has novel, but actually practical solutions to the challenge of sharing identifiable data. The biggest issue in sharing video is secure, ethical sharing of personally identifiable information. So Databrary has a policy framework for sharing identifiable data. Databrary restricts access to authorized users who are sponsored and formally approved for access by their institutions through a formal legally binding access agreement. So it requires institutional authorization of the researchers. Databrary also requires IRB approval for sharing data and for reusing data for research purposes. The bedrock principle is that participants have to give permission to share their data. Every file on Databrary has a user-defined release level. Unknown or private files can be seen only by the original research team. Other files can be accessed by authorized users. Files for learning audiences can be shown in presentations like this one. And public files can be accessed by anyone. How does sharing work? Well, authorized users can choose with whom they want to share their data. Most data are openly shared with the community of authorized Databrary users. Databrary also supports sharing with specific users on a case-by-case basis or totally public sharing. And sharing levels can be set file by file or data set by data set. Users decide when to share. Databrary endorses active curation, where data are uploaded as they're collected. And then when the researcher is ready to share, they can do it with a single button push. Databrary is specifically designed for storing and serving video. All of the videos are transcoded during upload into consistent formats, and the library is designed for large-scale storage. It has powerful search functions, so you can find the data sets and files that you want. You can even search within videos. And there's a single API, so machine learning researchers can find all the data sets they want and combine across them. In addition to storing video, Databrary stores lots of other data types, like things like participant demographics and tasks and questionnaires and imaging data and so on. How can researchers extract information from video? And here's this thing, video. It's taking something that's transient and making it tangible. It's capturing the behavior so that researchers can analyze it. Video itself is a tool, but you also need tools for capturing the behavior in real time and space, and also manipulating time and space. So like with video, you can use fast speeds or slow speeds. You can jog forward or backward, frame by frame. You can zoom in on, something of interest. You can zoom out. You can loop the video to rewatch an event over and over. And you can freeze the action to study a single moment in all of its complexity. Some information can be extracted from video using computer vision and machine learning. For example, you can track people's movements and where they are in space. And then since you know exactly where they are, you can generate a path from the location of the feet in the frame, you know, the distance they traveled and everywhere that they visited. Computer vision can also track movements while people do complex tasks, like this baby cruising over gaps in a handrail. And computer vision can pick out objects like people and plants and a bowl and a chair. Computer vision is really, really beautiful. Like here, we're using computer vision to track the location and the orientation of each brick as children are building constructions. And computer vision can track the children's hand position and orientation while they're doing it. Well, computer vision and machine learning are wonderful tools, but human annotations provide the gold standard for machine learning algorithms. And humans can apply annotations that go beyond the scope of today's computer vision. And that's where DataView comes in. DataView is part of a suite of tools that are offered and supported by Databrary. DataView is free and it's open source. It has three main components. There's a media player that displays the videos, as many videos as your computer can handle. There's a video controller with a scrub bar to move quickly through the video, keys for fingertip control over playback, no mousing, and functions to highlight or limit the region of video playback. And there's a spreadsheet where you actually enter the data. There's columns for every coding pass and cells for each tagged event. DataView has a powerful scripting language and libraries, so researchers can use Ruby or Python or R to create and modify columns and codes and cells. They can check for typos and impossible values. They can import and export data to CSV files or import physiological data. And they can export data to specific software like CLAN or GSEC. And there's a living repository of scripts on GitHub. And DataView staff offer free technical support for scripting, designing spreadsheets, and annotation strategies. DataView allows users to capture the onset and offset of user-specified events. So each of these, user-determined events are time-locked to the video. On the left here, you see locomotor behaviors and object interactions by a baby and a mom. This is from the play data set. So here, the baby is initiating locomotion, pulling his mother out of her chair. And when the mother's right foot hits the floor there, the human annotator begins the locomotor code for mom with the letter L. So the baby and the mom are both locomoting with the baby holding a toy. And I'm gonna zoom in so I can show you when the toy transfers from the baby to the mom. This small overlap here between the cells is when they're both touching that object. So now the O code is beginning for the mom as she takes the toy. And now it's the mom holding the toy and leading the baby in locomotion.
Walk the dog?
Here you see the power of DataView applied to a mother and baby from the play videos. This spreadsheet is already filled up with behavioral codes. Each column here is a different type of behavior for the baby and for the mother. The white cells are behaviors that haven't happened yet. The green cells are behaviors happening right now on the video, and the red are behaviors that have already happened. You can see how behaviors are happening in every domain and how quickly behavior changes from one thing to another. Databrary and DataView are both open source projects. Everything's free, everything's open, and everything is shared on GitHub. So to summarize, video data and documentation can transform the science of behavior and development and learning and teaching and biomedical research and health. For behavioral scientists, video can improve transparency and speed our progress. For data scientists, video provides this incredibly rich and temporally dense streams of data. For computer scientists and AI researchers, there's unlimited opportunities to extract data streams. And for vision scientists, they can use video to understand the statistics of natural vision. Finally, as big science, like all of us together, the point is we have the paradigms and the tools and the technology and the infrastructure to really understand behavior and its development in health and in disability. We've just got to do it. And Databerry is funded by NIH and NSF and DARPA and various foundations and societies, and by NYU and Penn State universities. Thanks.
So thank you so much for that really interesting talk. So I'd like to open up the chat for questions. So I can see some trickling in now. So the first question is about representation of African countries. This is a question by Dr. Mankupke. Is the video data weird? I don't know what that means, but do you think that this is a function of resource availability, cultural acceptance of video data, or something else?
Okay, she has two really, really wonderful questions. Weird means Western educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. Yeah, Databerry now is pretty weird. There are some inroads into, non-weird countries, and there's definitely non-weird data on there. Like I showed you some data from the Piraha Indians in the Amazon, the baby with the knife and the monkey. So there are non-weird data on Databerry, but most of it is weird. And I think it's more a function of resource availability than anything else right now. Like, if we could resource countries and researchers in those countries by giving them, Wi-Fi and access to resources like Databerry, I really think, the goal is to bring the world to the world, and we can do that through video. And NICHD people, we've been thinking about a global play for years now. So, all these things just take money, but, totally doable. Like my point is, we have all the stuff to do it. Even, somebody's got the money. So, Kathy, your question about plans to provide a video description for blind scientists and students, that's a great question. And, in general, we need, to make these tools more sort of, accessible for hearing impaired and visually impaired people. But in a way, like the sort of the miracle of video is its visual component. So we can describe video, and blind scientists can hear what's in video or hear audio streams. But to my mind, like what makes, the difference between reading about or hearing about how a wild squirrel can, do this amazing acrobatic landing is being able to see it and to manipulate that visual information.
So feel free to put more questions in the chat. But here, this is a question that I had. So what would you say are the largest challenges or bottlenecks to sharing this type of data? This type of video data? Like which of the elements is maybe the most challenging to you?
I think there really needs to be strong mandates. So if this is something, if funders want people to share their data, You just have to tell them that if you want money, you have to share your data. So for example, the James S. McDonald Foundation just made that part of their Scholars Awards. They give out grants of $600,000, you know, over 5 years, and they're pretty much, you know, like, we're supporting your research program. You're smart, go do whatever. But they have to make a commitment to sharing their data. And if they're collecting behavior, they have to document and share it in a real repository like Databrary. So I think, you know, like, one of my pet peeves is like, now, you know, you get a badge and you can get to this and get to that for sharing. They're sharing and sharing and sharing. Like, real sharing is open sharing. Just putting your stuff on the Open Science Foundation, that's not sharing unless it's actually open sharing. If somebody has to email you and ask for permission to get at your data, that's not actually sharing, whether or not you got an OSF badge, right? So putting, you know, processed data, like little flat file data at the end of your science article, that's not really sharing. Nobody understands where those numbers came from. So I think that this is really up to funders, and it's easier for foundations to just make a rule and decide how they're going to give out their money. But so can NIH. I mean, you guys, this is on you. This is not, you know, not on people like me. We've built the tools and we're changing community practices, but you really want to change, you guys have to do it.
Here's another question from the audience. Are there already robust methods of segmentation of images, voice, speech, etc.?
There are, and, you know, computer vision and AI researchers are hard at work at this kind of thing. Some things are easier to do than others. So automatic transcription of speech, like you saw even in that little 10-second clip, that's really hard for a machine learning algorithm to do. So to pull out, you know, like, speech from like a noisy natural environment, or to pull out, you know, baby talk or speech that's, you know, fluidly moving from one language to another, that's a hard problem that hasn't been well solved. On the other hand, human transcribers can do it, you know, pretty easily. And with tools like DataView, which has special features for transcribing, you know, they can do it, and they can do it, you know, with like nearly 100% accuracy. So it really depends on the context and the kinds of behaviors that you're interested in. And I think that many people in the computer science and AI fields are much more open about, you know, like, sharing their code and sharing their ideas and trying to push the field forward, more so than behavioral and biomedical researchers.
So another question, does Databrary have researcher workspaces, or do authorized users download the raw video data locally?
Authorized users can download the raw video data locally and then do what they want with it. Yeah, and DataView is a desktop tool. So there you can do, you know, some manipulations of the video on Databrary itself, but if you want to do like really fine-grained frame by frame analyses, you know, at this point, Wi-Fi isn't sufficient to support that kind of video, you know, sort of exploration of the videos or video analyses. And so you can download the data. And I think this is really important, you know, so some researchers and whatever think like, oh, you have to have like a citadel, you know, where there's like, you're like COVID cleared or something, and then you enter like a little cave, and then you can only watch the video, but you can't actually take anything out. And some groups mistakenly think that if you tell people they can watch something but not download it, that, you know, like, dude, your 10-year-old knows how to download videos that are streaming on their laptop or their phone. So what it really is about is having the right policy framework. So telling families or, you know, participants of any age from anywhere what the risks are and and what the potential benefits are. And we have found that for families of people who have disabilities, they're eager to share. Really, if I could speed progress for my child with Down syndrome or autism or cerebral palsy, you know, my kid has cerebral palsy. It's not a secret. like, please just put as many people on it as possible and, find an intervention that will make, my parent or my child's life better, right? So you just have to tell them and ask them, and then you can get their permission to share. And one last thing about, using the video locally is that, part of the whole authorization agreement is that people are promising to treat your data with the same level of care as they treat their own data, and with the same level of supervision as they treat their own data. And your university, NYU or whatever it is taking responsibility if there's any misuse of the data.
So we have more questions trickling in. The next one is, how do you plan for the long-term storage of all this data?
Kathy. NYU has agreed to store anything that's in Databrary indefinitely, but it turns out that it's not just, storing and streaming video. It's also, like upkeep and upgrading and, DevOps and all this other stuff as browsers change and people's needs change and new kinds of data become available. So we really need an endless stream of funding for developers minimally, and community outreach people, and tech support people, so that I'll write grants till I retire. But after that, Databrary has so much people and data in it already. It needs a long-term sustainability plan, and we're working on that. We probably will have some kind of a subscription, even a very minimal subscription, from researchers, like, $1,000 out of your grant, or, paying some nominal fee for all the free tech support that we're offering for people how to code. That can easily raise, the funds that we need for a long-term sustainability plan.
I guess related to data, is standardization of video formats and lossless conversion between formats an issue?
It is not an issue. So we store the original format and the transcoded standardized format. And so as standardization changes, the idea is that we would just globally do that across the whole library. But researchers can download the original format or the transcoded format, either one. So you never lose anything. And this idea of active curation is that researchers can use Databrary like their offsite safe, secure storage facility. It's kind of like their lab server until they're ready to share. And so if they just put their stuff in there and everything's organized and labeled and tagged and whatever, and then when they're ready to share, they just literally push a button and the stuff gets shared.
How would a user find videos of interest? Does the search use the annotation by the depositor only? Are there
wonderful question. Yeah, I love it. Are there ways to bring in additional information about the contents of the video for querying? So we have a pretty powerful search engine right now, and we're in the midst of a Databrary 2.0. So any text that's associated with the volume makes it quick searchable, like in Google, you start typing and then it offers you different solutions to end your thing. So it already is helping you to find the right volume or the right files. To find bits of video, so within a video file, to find that little bit of video where the person's speaking in Spanish, or the child is moving, or the child is crying, or whatever they're offering, that's where the instructions happened or whatnot. That does need to be tagged by the person who deposited it or by another researcher. So, there's tags in Databrary, so anybody can apply tags, and also people can take someone else's data and fork it and start a new project and add their own annotations to that project. And now you have double the annotations. And it's still an open question whether standardized ontologies is the way to go. I personally think it's not, because I've been using video for my entire career. And, you know, the coolest thing about behavior, you're always discovering something new. And so, you know, I actually don't really know what should count as, say, a walking step. I used to think it was people moving their legs forward, and I sure contributed a lot to that. And then when I started studying natural walking, we realized that people take steps in place, and they might just move one foot in a bunch of times, or they walk in circles or whatever. And like, isn't that walking? I don't know. And so most fields don't have, you know, like a common agreement about what behavior is what, but Play demonstrates how to do this. If you share your code book, you share all the definitions for your annotations, then people can put that together to search within videos and find the little bits that they want to analyze.
So do you use a data access committee to prove access to data? And is the DAC process aligned to data use limitations in the original study consent?
For people to share their data on Databrary, they essentially have to do what their IRB thinks is equivalent to the Databrary sharing agreement. So you can keep your entire data set intact. Some people can say, I don't want to share, you know, beyond the people on the protocol and the research team, or, you know, sure, share it publicly, or you can share it with learning audiences, or you can just share it within labs for authorized researchers. You know, they get to choose. And then also researchers can decide, I think it's more sensitive than, you know, this person thought it was, so I'm not going to share it as broad a level as this person gave me permission to do. But Databrary itself, we don't take responsibility for what permissions are put on data sets. Your university does. That's why we have that university agreement. Your university takes responsibility for you and what you do with your data and with other people's data.
And I think we have time for one more question. So this question is about secondary data use.
Love the question. That's also, you know, part of, I mean, we're just like inventing this as we go. But, you know, we realized as Databrary took off and people really were doing data reuse, that we needed a more powerful way to show links back to the original data set, and that people could take like bits from this data set and this data set and this data set and so on. So we're building something called virtual volumes, where those links will be automatic. Right now, the way we capture secondary data reuse is that, and yes, you can add metadata and annotations to the original data sets, but essentially what you said, they're creating secondary analysis data sets and then manually linking them back to the original. But soon it'll be better. That's a great question, though.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adolph and Dr. Price. This was just such a fun seminar, and I loved all the different videos. It was just wonderful watching them. I really appreciate that you took time out of your busy schedule to provide the seminar today. It will be made available to the public on our website, which I linked in the chat, fairly soon. So thank you again. Our next seminar, as a reminder, is on November 19th at noon. It's Dr. Alex Rokolowski from the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center. Thanks again, and see you in November. This was just fantastic.